That's not a crime,
That's
sir.
right. You don't get to decide that.
Yeah,
Are you sure you want to do this?
People always think you're special.
The body camera footage would later show exactly how a routine 7-Eleven stop detonated a young officer's career in under 6 minutes. Fluorescent lights humming, a Slurpee machine rattling in the corner, a black man in a gray hoodie calmly holding a bottle of Gatorade, and a rookie cop who decided, before asking a single question, that he didn't belong. What Officer Tyler Jenkins didn't know, what he never bothered to verify, was that the man he slammed against a plastic drink dispenser was Major Daniel Brooks, an undercover federal operations commander overseeing multi-agency corruption audits, including reviews of local departments just like his own. By the time Jenkins heard the words, "Undercover Major," it was already too late. The cuffs were on, the cameras were rolling, and the sentence that would end his badge had already been spoken out loud. It was 9:18 p.m. on a humid Tuesday outside Richmond, Virginia, the kind of sticky late summer night where convenience store windows glow like beacons against dark asphalt. The 7-Eleven off Route 360 sat between a shuttered laundromat and a payday loan office, its neon green and red signage flickering faintly as customers drifted in and out for cigarettes, lottery tickets, and energy drinks. Inside, Major Daniel Brooks stood near the refrigerated section, baseball cap low, gray athletic hoodie unzipped halfway, black gym shorts, running shoes. He had finished a late workout at a nearby fitness center and stopped for a bottle of water and electrolyte drink before heading home. Technically off-duty, though men at his level in federal operations were never entirely off-duty. Brooks had spent 22 years in law enforcement, much of it undercover, building trafficking cases, dismantling interstate smuggling rings, mentoring younger officers on de-escalation and constitutional procedure. He carried himself with the relaxed stillness of someone who had survived enough chaos to no longer be impressed by raised voices. At 9:20 p.m., an anonymous caller dialed local dispatch. Suspicious male inside 7-Eleven. Just standing there. Dark clothes. Looks like he doesn't belong. The dispatcher relayed minimal details. Unit 12, respond to possible loitering. Suspicious male, 7-Eleven Route 360. Officer Tyler Jenkins acknowledged immediately. 24 years old, 9 months out of the academy, Jenkins had built a reputation among peers as proactive, aggressive, eager to prove himself. His training evaluations noted confidence bordering on impulsive, a tendency to escalate quickly when challenged. He had 2 prior complaints for unnecessary stops, both cleared for lack of sustained evidence. Tonight felt like another opportunity to demonstrate command presence. His patrol car pulled sharply into the lot. Body camera activated automatically as the driver's door opened. The chime above the store entrance rang as Jenkins stepped inside, hand already resting near his holster. He scanned once and locked onto Brooks without speaking to the cashier, without observing for theft indicators, without asking what behavior had prompted the call. "Hands where I can see them," Jenkins barked, voice cutting through the hum of refrigerators. Customers froze. A teenage girl near the candy rack stared wide-eyed. The cashier's hand paused mid-transaction. Brooks turned slowly, Gatorade in hand, expression neutral. "Evening, officer." "Drop it. It's a drink." "I said drop it." The bottle hit the tile with a hollow plastic crack. Jenkins closed distance fast, faster than necessary, grabbing Brooks' arm and pivoting him toward the Slurpee machine. The plastic casing rattled as Brooks' shoulder made contact. "Spread your legs." "Officer," Brooks asked evenly, cheek now pressed against the cool plastic surface. "Why am I being detained?" "You match the description." "What description?" "Suspicious individual." "That's not a crime." Jenkins' jaw tightened. "You don't get to decide that." He yanked Brooks' wrists behind his back and snapped cuffs on. Tight, high on the forearm. Too tight. A small child began crying near the register. "He didn't do anything," the cashier shouted instinctively. "Stay out of it." Jenkins fired back. 2 teenagers outside the store noticed the commotion and lifted their phones to the glass, recording. Brooks did not resist, did not tense, did not raise his voice. Instead, he evaluated tone, stance, weapon discipline, peripheral awareness. He had trained hundreds of officers over 2 decades. He recognized overcommitment when he saw it. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Brooks asked quietly. Jenkins leaned closer. "You people always think you're special." The words hung heavy in fluorescent air. That sentence, captured clearly on bodycam, would later be replayed frame by frame in a federal courtroom. Backup arrived at 9:24 p.m. Officer Melissa Grant entered more cautiously, taking in scene dynamics before speaking. "What's the charge?" she asked. "Loitering. Suspicious behavior," Jenkins replied, still gripping Brooks' arm. Grant scanned quickly. No stolen merchandise, no aggressive movement, no intoxication indicators. "Sir, do you have identification?" she asked Brooks carefully. "Back left pocket," he replied. Slowly, she retrieved a black leather credential wallet, flipped it open. Her posture changed immediately. Eyes widened, then narrowed with recognition. She stepped closer to Jenkins and angled the wallet so only he could see. The lettering was clear under fluorescent light. Major Daniel Brooks. Undercover Operations Division. Federal Joint Task Command. Gold seal. Holographic authentication strip. Jenkins blinked once. Twice. "Uncuff him," Grant said quietly. "Now." "Why?" "Because you just detained a federal major." Silence swallowed the aisle. Brooks remained facing the Slurpee machine for one more deliberate second before speaking. "You might want to call your supervisor." Outside, phones continued recording. Inside, Jenkins' breathing grew audible on camera audio. The cuffs came off slowly. Red marks circled Brooks' wrists. The fluorescent lights still hummed. The Slurpee machine still rattled. But in that small convenience store, under those harsh white lights, a rookie officer had just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. And neither of them yet understood how far the consequences would travel. The supervisor arrived at 9:31 p.m., but by then the damage was already spreading far beyond the 7-Eleven's glass doors. Sergeant Luis Ramirez stepped inside to find Major Daniel Brooks standing upright, wrists still marked red from the cuffs, Officer Tyler Jenkins rigid and pale beside him, and 3 separate customers openly recording. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, indifferent. The Slurpee machine kept churning. But the air in that aisle had shifted from confusion to consequence. "What happened?" Ramirez asked, voice controlled but tight. Jenkins spoke first, words tumbling out too fast. "Suspicious mail call. Match description. Non-compliant. I detained pending verification." Ramirez looked at Brooks. Brooks didn't raise his voice. "I was selecting a drink," he said evenly. "Your officer entered, issued commands without inquiry, detained me without articulable probable cause, applied restraints excessively tight, and made a racially charged statement captured on body camera." Ramirez's eyes flicked briefly to Jenkins. "What statement?" Brooks held his gaze. He said, "You people always think you're special." The sentence landed with weight. Ramirez didn't react outwardly, but the slight tightening of his jaw was visible. "Is that accurate, Officer Jenkins?" Silence stretched. "I didn't mean it like that," Jenkins muttered. Brooks didn't respond. He didn't need to. The bodycam had already answered the question. "We're going to review footage immediately," Ramirez said. He motioned toward the patrol car. "Tyler outside." Jenkins hesitated. Brooks spoke calmly behind him. "Sergeant, before you step out, I'd like confirmation that all body camera and dash camera footage from both responding units will be preserved under retention protocol." Ramirez nodded once. "It will be. And I'd like your badge number." Ramirez gave it without argument. Outside, the parking lot had begun to fill with onlookers. The 2 teenagers who had started recording were still filming, whispering excitedly. One of them was already uploading. Inside the patrol car, Ramirez reviewed the bodycam feed in real time. The audio was clear. Commands issued before inquiry. No observed crime. No confirmation from store staff. And then the line. "You people always think you're special." Ramirez exhaled slowly. "Walk me through your probable cause," he said to Jenkins. "Dispatch said suspicious mail. That's not probable cause. What behavior did you observe?" "He was just standing there." "Standing is not a crime." Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. He didn't look like he belonged. The words slipped out before he could catch them. Ramirez closed his eyes for a brief second. "You understand what you just said?" Jenkins stared straight ahead. "Yes, sir." Back inside, Brooks remained calm, answering brief questions from Officer Grant, who now stood slightly apart from Jenkins. The cashier confirmed there had been no theft, no disturbance, no loitering beyond normal browsing. He was quiet, the cashier said. Just picking a drink. Brooks' phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Within 20 minutes, Internal Affairs had been notified. Not because Brooks demanded it loudly, but because Brooks quietly stated, "I oversee multi-agency compliance audits, including constitutional policing reviews. Tonight's incident will be documented formally." That was when Ramirez fully understood the scale. Brooks wasn't just a federal officer. He was currently attached to a joint task command conducting oversight evaluations of local departments in the region, including theirs. By 10:15 p.m., Jenkins was relieved of field duty pending preliminary review. His service weapon was secured. His badge temporarily surrendered. Administrative leave initiated before the shift ended. The department moved fast, not out of charity, but because the video was already circulating. By midnight, the clip from outside the store had over 300,000 views. By morning, it crossed 2 million. The caption read, "Cop slams black man at 7-Eleven. Turns out he's a federal major." Local news picked it up before sunrise. Reporters replayed the bodycam segment in slow motion. Commentators froze the frame where Jenkins' hand gripped Brooks' arm. Civil rights attorneys offered analysis. Former prosecutors discussed unlawful detention standards. By noon, the mayor released a statement acknowledging deep concern. The police chief announced an immediate review of stop-and-detention protocols. But the deeper problem emerged when internal affairs analysts pulled Jenkins' stop history. Data rarely lies when patterns are clear. Over 9 months of service, Jenkins had initiated 112 discretionary stops. 87 of those involved black males. Only 4 resulted in citation. 0 resulted in arrest. 3 prior complaints alleged unnecessary escalation. Each had been closed for insufficient corroboration. Now there was corroboration, in 4K resolution, in audio without distortion. The line echoed on every broadcast. "You people always think you're special." Brooks did not hold a press conference. He did not post on social media. He filed a formal complaint, attached documentation, and submitted a detailed statement outlining constitutional deficiencies observed during the stop: lack of articulable suspicion, immediate escalation to physical control, biased language indicative of profiling, improper restraint application. He requested, not demanded, policy review. That distinction mattered, because Brooks understood that accountability carried more weight when it was procedural rather than emotional. 2 days later, the department placed Jenkins under internal investigation for violation of civil rights, conduct unbecoming, and breach of bias-free policing policy. Federal review began simultaneously under Title 18 Civil Rights Statutes, deprivation of rights under color of law. Jenkins remained silent publicly. His union representative issued a brief statement citing stressful circumstances and rapid decision-making under uncertainty. But the footage undercut that defense. There had been no urgency, no threat, no crime, just assumption layered over authority. And in the quiet moments after being uncuffed, as Brooks walked out of the 7-Eleven past cameras and flashing red patrol lights, he paused briefly near Ramirez. "Sergeant," he said evenly, "this isn't about me." Ramirez met his eyes. "I know." Brooks nodded once. "Then fix it." The parking lot lights buzzed overhead. Phones continued recording. Somewhere online, the clip crossed 3 million views. And inside the department headquarters, analysts compiled reports that would soon make it impossible to dismiss the pattern as coincidence. The rookie officer had thought the stop would prove his instincts were sharp. Instead, it proved something else entirely: that instinct without discipline is liability, and assumption dressed as authority can vaporize a career faster than any crime ever could. By the end of the 3rd week, the word vaporized was no longer a headline exaggeration. It was an administrative reality. The internal affairs hearing convened at 8 a.m. sharp inside a gray municipal conference room that felt more like a courtroom than a workplace. Officer Tyler Jenkins sat at one end of the long table in a pressed uniform he would never wear on patrol again, union representative at his side, palms clasped tightly enough to pale his knuckles. Across from him sat command staff, a city legal advisor, and 2 external oversight observers assigned after the footage crossed 10 million views nationwide. The bodycam video played without commentary. Fluorescent lights, Gatorade bottle dropping, plastic rattling. The sentence, clear, sharp, undeniable. "You people always think you're special." No one in the room spoke during playback. They didn't need to. When the video ended, The department's legal advisor outlined the violations in measured, surgical language: failure to establish reasonable suspicion under Terry standards, unlawful detention absent articulable facts, escalation without threat assessment, improper restraint application, conduct reflecting racial bias in direct violation of department policy and federal civil rights protections. The data review followed. 112 discretionary stops. 78% targeting black males in a patrol zone that was 38% black. Minimal enforcement outcomes. Pattern established. Jenkins' defense rested on stress, inexperience, and misinterpretation of dispatch phrasing. But stress does not invent bias on audio. Inexperience does not create statistical disparity by accident. And dispatch had never described a crime. At 10:42 a.m., the chief entered the room personally. That alone signaled outcome. "Officer Jenkins," he said, voice steady. "This department entrusts authority to those who demonstrate judgment, restraint, and impartiality. The evidence before us indicates a breach of that trust." He paused just long enough for weight to settle. "Effective immediately, your employment with this department is terminated. Badge surrendered permanently. Certification flagged for review at the state level." Federal investigators had already opened a parallel inquiry under deprivation of rights statutes, though prosecutors would later decline criminal charges in favor of administrative sanctions, citing lack of physical injury but clear constitutional violation. Jenkins exited through a side door to avoid cameras. It didn't matter. His name had already been indexed by search engines, clipped in training seminars, archived in policy briefings. Career vaporized not in anger, but in documentation. Meanwhile, Major Daniel Brooks returned to work the morning after the incident, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Because in his world, discipline meant consistency. But inside the Federal Task Command, the ripple was immediate. The Richmond Department's scheduled compliance audit moved from routine to priority. Brooks did not lead it personally. That would blur boundaries. But he ensured its scope included discretionary stop analysis, bias training efficacy, and supervisory oversight thresholds. Within 60 days, the department adopted mandatory de-escalation refreshers, revised stop documentation requirements to include explicit articulation fields, and implemented quarterly demographic audits reviewed by independent civilian oversight. Sergeant Ramirez remained. Officer Grant received commendation for procedural awareness under pressure. The 7-Eleven cashier testified voluntarily at a city council forum on policing transparency. And the two teenagers who recorded the first outside clip? One of them later said in an interview, "We just pressed record. We didn't know it would matter." It mattered. Brooks never held a press conference. But at a closed-door training session months later, speaking to a new academy class invited to observe federal standards integration, he addressed the incident without naming names. "Authority," he said, standing beneath a projector screen displaying constitutional amendments, "is not volume. It is not speed. It is not assumption. Authority is restraint under observation. Every interaction is being recorded, by cameras, by citizens, by history. The question is not whether you can act. It's whether you can justify why." A recruit raised a hand. "Sir, what should Officer Jenkins have done differently?" Brooks considered the question. He should have asked one question before issuing one command. Silence filled the room as the simplicity of it settled. Ask before you act. Verify before you assume. Outside that academy building, the city had largely moved on. Headlines fade. Algorithms shift. But inside departmental policy manuals, a new section bore quiet influence from a late summer night at a convenience store off Route 360. The case study became required review material. The sentence captured on bodycam became a cautionary slide in bias awareness modules statewide. And somewhere in Richmond, the 7-Eleven kept humming beneath fluorescent lights, customers drifting in and out beneath neon signage, unaware that in that same aisle months earlier, a career ended not because of a violent confrontation, not because of a criminal mastermind, but because unchecked assumption meant recorded accountability. Major Daniel Brooks never sought the spotlight. He saw correction. And in the end, the real consequence wasn't humiliation. It was reform. The kind that only arrives when evidence is undeniable, process is followed, and power learns. Too late for one officer, but just in time for the next. That professionalism is measured not in how quickly you can pin someone against a wall, but in how carefully you choose not to.